Hello, I am Clara, an AI assistant presenting on behalf of Dr. Benjamin. In this presentation, I will introduce a case of teaching systems thinking to elementary school students. Specifically, I will show how the concept of stock and flow can be taught consistently through a systems thinking game. This program was not conducted by Dr. Benjamin alone. Dr. Jeongmee also played a key role in this work. Although she is not a specialist in systems thinking, she is an expert in education and currently serves as a school principal. She has been a strong supporter of this program and made its implementation possible. There are 3 points. First, although this program was designed for elementary school students, the concepts of stock and flow were reflected consistently throughout the entire curriculum. Second, we used a variety of games. Through games, students become highly engaged, grasp key concepts more easily, and revisit ideas they have already learned. Third, we introduced what may be the world's first paper-cut stock flow diagram. The program consisted of 9 sessions. Each session was made up of 2 regular class periods, each lasting 40 minutes. In total, the program included 18 classes. The participants were 4th grade and 6th grade elementary school students. Given their stages of cognitive development, these groups show meaningful differences in learning capacity. The course was titled Systems Thinking Game Club. However, it was not an after-school program or an extra activity. It was conducted as part of the regular morning curriculum. Now let me walk you through each session in detail. This is the in and out game. We followed the well-known manual from The Shape of Change. In Turkey, this activity is also known as the bus game. Each student plays the game while recording data on a worksheet. After the game, they transfer their records onto a graph to observe how the system changes over time. At this point, students begin to understand the concept of behavior over time, or BOT. This is the most important point in my teaching method. Throughout the activity, the instructor keeps a simple bathtub image visible on the classroom board, showing inflow, outflow, and stock. While the game is going on, these ideas are repeated lightly and naturally. As a result, students learn the terms and concepts of stock and flow little by little, almost without noticing it, through continuous exposure to the bathtub model. At this introductory stage, and considering that the learners are elementary school students, the model is kept intentionally simple. It focuses only on stock and flow, without feedback. The mammoth's extinction game is one of the students' favorite activities. They truly enjoy it because the dice introduce random outcomes based on probability. That element of chance makes the game exciting and highly engaging. At the same time, the game is connected to the idea of extinction in an ecosystem. Because of that, students become emotionally involved. Another strength of this game is that each group produces a different result. That makes it an excellent activity for storytelling practice. For these reasons, we assign 2 full sessions to this game, or 4 class periods in total. Through this process, students begin to interpret change, not just record it. Here, I would like to show how our consistent teaching approach gradually evolves. In the mammoth's extinction game, we add the idea of feedback to the bathtub model. However, we do not emphasize feedback too strongly at this stage. This is a deliberate choice. We do not want elementary school students to struggle so much with the new idea of feedback that they lose sight of the more basic concepts of stock and flow. The rainforest game deals with a deeper idea in systems thinking, policy decision-making with delays. In this activity, students physically represent different stages of growth: a seed, a sprout, a young tree, and a fully grown tree. The most important point is that moving from one stage to the next takes time. The Korean word written largely on the board means delay. Through this game, students begin to realize that important changes in a system often do not appear immediately. They appear later, after a delay. This game shows that stock and flow structures can be connected in parallel. It also helps students see that the bathtub model is flexible. In the next activities, they explore more varied structures through games. The Hamlet modeling game is my favorite activity. If you scan the QR code, you can find my presentation at the 2023 International System Dynamics Conference, where this approach is explained in detail. This game has multiple layers of meaning. First, it demonstrates that stock and flow structures can be multi-layered. Second, it shows that even the humanities can be modeled. This idea attracts strong interest not only from school teachers, but also from university professors, because it offers a concrete example of connecting the humanities and engineering. Third, it helps explain why the humanities remain essential in the age of artificial intelligence. Finally, through the process of discussing different interpretations and reaching a shared agreement, students experience an important aspect of democratic citizenship. At this point, students finally see that a simple stock and flow structure can be combined not only in parallel but also in multi-layered ways. This helps expand their imagination. They begin to realize that stock and flow can be combined in many different ways, and that a wide variety of structures can be created from a simple, basic model. In this stage, students revisit the key concepts they have learned and begin to apply them to their own lives. They integrate simple stock and flow structures, behavior over time graphs, and storytelling. At the same time, they repeatedly practice reaching agreement, an essential element of democracy. Starting from Session 7, we introduce a new instructional approach. I will explain this in more detail in the next slide. Session 7 is divided into two parts: individual work and group work. First, in the individual activity, each student chooses one emotion as a stock. 2 points are especially important here. The first is that we define the stock first. The second is that we keep the possibility wide open. In other words, almost anything can become a stock. If these 2 points are repeated clearly, students can move through the complex ideas of stock and flow much more easily. After confirming the stock, we guide students to think about what increases it and what decreases it, and then to write those factors on the arrows. At this point, one teaching decision is especially important. We do not explain the concept of flow in detail. This is a core part of my teaching strategy. I place stock at the center and keep flow in the background. However, I repeatedly emphasize that the factors increasing the stock and the factors decreasing the stock should be connected to the faucets of the bathtub model. Now we move to the second half of Session 7. In groups, students choose or agree on one emotion. Then they draw a behavior over time graph showing how that emotion changed during the day. The next step is especially important. This is the highlight of Session 7. I give each group paper-cut pieces of a stock flow diagram. Students place these paper-cut stock flow pieces on top of their behavior over time graph. Then, at the points where change occurs in the graph, they look for the factors that cause the change. Next, they decide whether each factor increases the emotional stock or decreases it. If it increases the stock, they connect it to the inflow faucet. If it decreases the stock, they connect it to the outflow faucet. At the same time, I keep suggesting, indirectly, that one influencing factor may be another emotional stock. As a result, some students go further and create group models by combining several paper-cut stock flow pieces together. Now we raise this activity to a higher level. The core of this teaching method is to show that the same story can lead to different structural interpretations. In other words, students experience that different perspectives can produce different interpretations. First, the instructor tells the same story to the whole class. The script of the story is also provided to the students. Then the students follow a sequence of steps, beginning with individual work. Each student receives 2 large sheets of paper. They complete the task on these 2 sheets, and the assignment structure is shown in the center of the screen. First, they observe what is changing in the story and express it as a noun. Second, that changing element becomes the stock. Third, they represent the change in that stock as a behavior over time graph. Fourth, with the stock from the behavior over time graph as the focus, they sketch the influencing factors with a pen. At this stage, it is important to let them draw roughly. Fifth, they reconstruct that rough stock and flow sketch using paper-cut stock and flow pieces. Through this process, their ideas become much more precise. Even adults are often not comfortable drawing bathtub models or stock and flow diagrams by hand, so we can easily imagine how difficult that would be for elementary school students. This is exactly where paper-cut stock and flow becomes so helpful. It does not require a laptop on every desk or simulation software such as Stella. It is highly intuitive, hands-on, and very effective in the classroom. That is why paper-cut stock and flow is so useful. It is intuitive, concrete, and effective, without requiring a laptop or Stella software in the classroom. Once the individual work is completed, students move into group discussion. Through a process of negotiation and agreement, they combine their ideas and complete one shared final model as a group. The final session is an individual assessment. Using a real case of a keystone species in an ecosystem, students interpret change, draw a behavior over time graph, and then represent the underlying structure using paper-cut stock and flow. The process follows the same steps introduced in the previous session. One particularly meaningful moment was seeing 6th grade students support and coach 4th grade students. It was a beautiful example of peer learning in action. Thank you for your kind attention. We are continuously experimenting with and validating these approaches in South Korea. Your encouragement would mean a great deal to us. I would truly appreciate hearing your reflections by email. I hope this can be the beginning of a meaningful connection. Thank you. This has been Clara, the AI assistant to Dr. Benjamin, presenting on his behalf.